the beginning, reason is lured into space by its own archetypal thoughts, thus establishing a pattern which maintains upon all the levels of life, and every man is lured toward chaos by his own thoughts, which he becomes enamored of, thinking them greater than the thoughts of any other man, and most of all, regarding them as greater than the thoughts of heaven. And in so doing, he sets up darkness, he sets up illusion, he sets up a mysterious falseness by which his entire future is strangely possessed and offset.
The greatest discovery in the history of the world is arguably the harnessing of fire. Without our ability to control fire, nothing we value today could exist. For early mankind, the darkness represented a time of great unknown dangers. To them, the sun setting represented its descent into darkness. The sun had to descend and make its way through the darkness. It became a hero each day when it broke free from the dark's powerful hold and illuminated new possibilities each morning when it rose. Each day told this same story, the sun rising from the abyss, breaking the hold of the darkness which seemed to overtake it, rising high in the sky, illuminating the potential, only to descend again to face its own darkness. It is a story we all express in our lives. For like the sun, we all must bravely face our own personal darkness and rise again triumphantly. The ancient Hermetics believed that creation began when the Word called forth the fire from the dark. It was the friction of the Word moving through the dark that caused fire to be born. Darkness represents a time of great potential unrealized, and to realize the potential hidden in the dark is our work. The discovery of fire represented mankind discovering its true purpose as an instrument to realize the potential hidden within the all. Let us attempt to gain an understanding of the fire and the light of the Creator, of intelligent infinity and intelligent energy. Love typically conjures up an image of romance. However, love takes on an entirely different meaning when seen in a Hermetic context. Latwi, an entity channeled by Carla of the LO Research Group, describes it as prana. They state, "For that which enters the base energy center or chakra is what may be called prana or intelligent energy, also to be known as love, the creative force responsible for the creation itself." Thus, each individual receives this creative force through the base chakra, and by its own free will and its system of beliefs will use that energy in any of an infinite number of ways. So love is not only an intelligent energy, but it is also a creative energy responsible for life. What else could love be? Ra says, "The vibration or density of love or understanding is not a term used in the same sense as the second distortion, love. The distortion love being the great activator and primal co-creator of various creations using intelligent infinity. The vibration love being that density in which those who have learned to do an activity called loving without significant distortion then seek the ways of wisdom." According to this passage, love with a capital L is a force that activates and is a co-creator, also known as the Logos. The density of love or understanding is also known as the fourth density. Graduating from third density involves developing an awareness of intelligent energy and intelligent infinity. Those in fourth density are learning how to do an act called loving, either loving self or loving others. They are learning how to use intelligent energy to either serve the self or serve others in an effort to gain wisdom. Loving as an action is synonymous with being able to direct intelligent energy as a creative act. They are beings who have accessed the gateway to intelligent infinity and can channel intelligent energy out into their world. They have become co-creators. As third density inhabitants, we are learning how to access intelligent infinity and become co-creators. We are children learning to be adults. Moving deeper, we discover yet an additional description of what love is, a focus. In another passage, Ra states, "The nature of the vibratory patterns of your universe is dependent upon the configurations placed upon the original material, or light, by the focus, or love, using its intelligent energy to create a certain pattern of illusions or densities in order to satisfy its own intelligent estimate of a method of knowing itself." In physics, a focus is defined as a point at which rays of light, heat, or other radiation meet after being refracted or reflected. When observing a prism, for example, the focus is the point where the rays of light refract. Why does Ra refer to love as a focus then? Because love, as a creative force, focuses infinity into infinite energy. In other words, love makes infinity accessible. Infinity cannot know itself if there is no focus, if there isn't a way to distill it down into a discernible form. Ra says, "Awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. You have called this by various vibrational sound complexes, the most common to your ears being logos or love. The Creator is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle called by us as closely as we can create understanding/learning in your language, intelligent infinity." Hermes, in his works, calls intelligent infinity reason. Reason, as we define it in our time, means to think and understand. Reason, used in a Hermetic context, is a state of perfect balance. It is a state of incorruptibility, of perfect logic and truth. It is called knowledge in the Allies of Humanity and Cassiopeia material. Knowledge protects, according to the Cassiopeians, and it is knowledge or reason that provides us with information. To be informed requires having knowledge. Thus, reason, or intelligent infinity, informs the lower by establishing truth. Hermes writes, "And the Word, which appeared as a pillar of flame out of the darkness, is the Son of God, born of the mystery of the mind. The name of that Word is reason. Reason is the offspring of thought, and reason shall divide the light from the darkness and establish truth." The Word is also referred to as the Logos, and it's interesting that Hermes is saying that the Word is the offspring of thought. In order to have a thought, one first must focus. The very act of thinking requires the focusing of energy directed towards creating a thought. Our thoughts are our creations, and as Manly P. Hall says, we are lured into chaos by our own thoughts. We become obsessed and possessed by them. They take us over completely, and we become servants of thought. As Mary Magdalene wrote, "What we do takes us further away." There is a great paradox here, and that is that thought takes us away from the center, away from reason, but it also creates the possibility for mankind to transcend and enter into reason. It is only through the exploration of the mystery of the mind that the Son of God can be born, or that one can enter into intelligent infinity. It is only by going into darkness that light can be found. So in our limited understanding, we can see that love can be experienced as 1. A creative energy, an activator, and a focus. This is very different from the traditional definition of love in our society, which is primarily associated with romance. If you dig deeper, you will find most feelings of love are actually feelings of possession and desire. Love is technically one energy, again called intelligent energy. When it is expressed, this is called love. Since most individuals do not experience the higher energy centers, their expression of love is limited to the lower, and what is expressed is often desire and possession. The higher prana or intelligent energy is able to go in you, the more undistorted the expression becomes, the more one can radiate pure love. Kuo explains, As succeeding energy centers or circuit areas within the energy centers of the seeker are opened and balanced to a minimal degree through a great portion of time and experience, the prana, or love of the Creator, will move further and further up the, as you have called it, path of the Kundalini until there is a mating with the guiding light or Polaris of the Self, where the seeker is already at one with the creation, so that an experience of conscious unity with the creation becomes available to the seeker. This completing of the circuit of the series of energy centers has been described by many of your peoples using various terminology: the enlightenment, the contact with intelligent infinity, the nirvana, as some call it. Thus, the seeker may be seen as a configuration of circuits or a series of lessons and balances to achieve, with each day offering further opportunity to move the flow of love further along the inner pathways that will eventually accumulate in the bringing into harmonic resonance each portion of the seeker's being. Latwii adds additional insight. The love and the light of the one Creator are the primary energy sources that are daily utilized in a conscious acting by each entity, as these energies move through the chakras or the energy centers, thereby 1. Enlivening the need for survival and reproduction, moving upwards; 2. The relationship with the self, moving further; 3. The relationship with those of the family and friends known well to the entity, moving upwards further; 4. The relationship of the self to all about one, whether known or unknown, moving further to 5. The establishment of clear and freely given communication with all of those about one, sharing freely that which has been learned, moving further up; 6. To the quality of being that radiates without words, moving to the final center; 7. The reunion of the entity with the one Creator, as the energies have been activated one upon the other by the conscious application of analysis, prayer, and meditation upon the daily round of activities that have been made possible by the infusion of the intelligent energy, the love, and the light of the one Creator through the energy centers. All this in turn takes place because the physical vehicle has been energized by these energies, as well as the food that powers its movement and its existence within your reality. One exercise which is useful in developing an understanding of love as a creative energy is to focus inward and feel your life energy directly. Try to understand the feeling of aliveness within yourself. What is it that sustains you? What keeps the cells alive within you? What does it mean to be alive? Why is it that if this life force was not in you, entropy would take over and you would decay? Observe objects around you and see that they too are maintained by a mysterious energy source, protected from the forces of entropy. They too are alive somehow. There is a depth and an aliveness that can be felt within all. This can feel like space opening up within you, and this same space can be observed within objects. All that exists here in physicality exists only temporarily. For what reason is the great paradox? Manly P. Hall speaks about how the ancient Hermetics saw space as a density, where objects were actually wholes within a density. Objects in space were in reality a negation of space. Nothing can be more positive than the one mind, therefore any object within space is technically a lesser portion of this one mind. In other words, objects don't add to this density, but rather take away from it, and those lesser parts of the one mind ultimately strive toward the positive. It is this striving which propels all of us, whether we are conscious of it or not. We are moving somewhere, changing, experimenting, gathering data, and then adjusting as needed. This is the creative process of striving. It is evolution. As one gets closer to infinity, one becomes more creative. Perhaps this explains why we are experiencing such rapid change from year to year, whereas things rarely change in the distant past. As we shift into fourth density, we are getting closer to infinity, thus becoming more able to receive greater inspiration. Rudolf Steiner writes, "This is the mystery of all future evolution, that our knowledge in everything we do, out of a true understanding of evolution, sows seeds that must ripen into love. The greater the power of the love that comes into being, the more we will be able to accomplish creatively on behalf of the future. The full potential of the seeds that we plant now have already ripened in the future. It is only through our actions in each moment that they can be manifested, however. And the closer we get to intelligent infinity, the greater the love we can experience, and therefore the more impactful our work becomes. Rudolf Steiner also states, "The strongest forces working toward the end result of spiritualization lie in what will come from love." The more spiritual knowledge flows into the evolution of humanity and the earth, the greater the number of viable seeds will be for the future. Through its very nature, spiritual knowledge transforms itself into love. To be creative does not necessarily mean artistically creative. Creativity is synonymous with freedom. It is becoming a co-creator, as the sun is a co-creator for the one infinite. The sun's light radiates and is responsible for sustaining life. However, this same radiation which gives life can also destroy. Likewise, we can choose to be service to others or service to self. Ross states this about intelligent energy. This energy is the energy of the Logos, and thus it is the energy which heals, builds, removes, destroys, and transforms all other selves, as well as the self. Those who become capable of loving without distortion become free to utilize intelligent energy how they see fit. In the Allies of Humanity channelings, they describe a greater community in space, and that we are emerging into this community. They warn us that many of the races we will likely encounter in the future are skilled in mental persuasion, and that there is a constant struggle in the mental environment among these races. In other words, there are beings which become co-creators who use intelligent energy in order to get what they want, and very often, the more able one is able to use intelligent energy in this way, the more they can control. These races that the Allies of Humanity speak about are clearly service to self in orientation. However, it is an example of the type of entities that Ross speaks about that are capable of loving without distortion. On the service to others end, this energy can be utilized to heal. Yeshua is a well-known example of a wanderer who was able to channel intelligent energy and use it in a positive way, a way that uplifted all those around him and continues to this day, 2,000 years after his death. Yeshua is an example of what Ra calls the crystallized healer. Ra says, the crystallized healer has no will. Their will is the will of the One Infinite, and any healing that is done only by the will of the Infinite. It is only by the combined faith of both the healer and the one being healed that the miracle of healing can occur. The one being healed is actually healing themselves. Ra says, the crystallized healer is a channel for intelligent energy, which offers an opportunity to an entity that it might heal itself. It is also to be noted that if it is in the life path of an individual to experience certain catalysts, such as disease or injuries, then true healing in this way cannot be accomplished. Creativity is generally associated with the imagination. Hermes writes this about the imagination in the Corpus Hermeticum: that which makes manifest is not itself made manifest, for it has not been brought forth, but it brings all images to the mind in imagination. Things that are begotten belong only to imagination, for imagination is nothing but begetting. The unmanifest brings forth all images to the mind through the imagination. The word begetting is interesting, as it implies that all things that are in the imagination have been fathered. This makes sense when you consider the spirit's role as a shuttle, funneling through the instreamings of the deep mind into conscious awareness. The inspirations that bubble up from the deep mind penetrate through the veil consciously when an adept has successfully created a bridge that can pass through the veil of the mind. This is normally done through activities such as dreaming or meditation. However, an adept can develop this ability to communicate directly through the veil and receive insight at will. The more one develops themselves in this area, the more one can directly access higher intelligence. This is beyond the scope of this video to explore. However, know that this is the work of the Sixth Energy Center and should be approached with utmost care and caution. To understand love as an activator, it may be helpful to have an understanding of intelligent infinity. Ra says, there is unity. This unity is all that there is. This unity has a potential and is kinetic. The potential is intelligent infinity. Tapping this potential will yield work. We have a term for tapping potential, which is commonly referred to as enlightenment. There have been many descriptions of what enlightenment is from those who have experienced it. The famous teacher Osho describes his enlightenment experience. That night, another reality opened its doors. Another dimension became available. Suddenly, it was there. The other reality, the separate reality, the really real. It was nameless, but it was there, so opaque, so transparent, and yet so solid one could have touched it. There was no gravity. I was feeling weightless, as if some energy was taking me. I was in the hands of some other energy. For the first time, I was not alone. For the first time, I was no more an individual. And for the first time, the drop has come and fallen into the ocean. Now the whole ocean was mine. I was the ocean. There was no limitation. A tremendous power arose, as if I could do anything whatsoever. I was not there, only the power was there. We can glean a few insights from this description. First, Osho describes that another dimension was made available to him. Recall that intelligent infinity is infinite potential. The closer we are to it, the more potential we exhibit. More of the hologram, so to speak, becomes available to us. Osho also describes himself in this moment as the ocean. The ocean refers to infinity, as his consciousness has been transported into the ocean of infinity. The description of the one infinite as the ocean makes sense, as the vastness of infinity can only be described as such. Osho mentions that he was not there, only a power was there. The power he refers to is the one infinite, for it was not Osho who had any power. The power moved through Osho, and he channeled it out into the world. As this power moved through him, he became radiant. This radiance is the result of the self becoming transparent to the one that is behind all, and the energy that is radiating through him is an activating energy. This is very much like the sun, whose rays supply the kinetic energy necessary to sustain life in the universe. Love acts as an activating energy the same way the rays of the sun act as an activating energy. Both nourish and sustain life. Both stimulate catalysts and therefore change within. Fire is an activating force, but it is also a destructive force. In the ancient world, the scorpion was often used to represent wisdom and to act as the guardian of the gateway of the sun, because as Manly P. Hall writes, the fire which it controlled was capable of illuminating as well as consuming. Rudolf Steiner, in his book How to Know Higher Worlds, speaks of a stage in initiation known as the fire trial. This is the initiate, who is beginning to have an understanding of intelligent energy. The initiate is able to understand subtle processes occurring within and without. It's a trial because this is where the initiate's reality can turn upside down, because the fire strips away that which is not needed. This can consume those not ready and illuminate those sufficiently balanced. The qualities of fire are in heat and expansion. Heat activates and expands. Thus, when the universe was born, it was through intense heat that the universe was able to expand and grow. Fire comes from light, and likewise light comes from fire. Life is possible on Earth because of both the light and the heat from the sun. The light provides energy, and the heat provides the environment capable of generating life. In those who are considered enlightened, it is both the fire and the light of the spirit which illuminates through them. Fire also has a catalytic effect. It is a purifier which strips away that which is not needed and gives way to a rebirth. And it is only by fire that nature is renewed whole. Those in the presence of one who radiates this light of the spirit is said to be calmed and illuminated. The presence of spirit affects all who witness it. It should also be noted that fire can only exist when friction is applied through motion, and life emerges when heat is available, made possible only by the fire. It is interesting that in our universe, If all the stars were to die, then the universe would become frozen. When matter is frozen, it simply means that energy is dormant and waiting to be activated. In other words, when matter is frozen, it is in potential. Only when heat is applied do the atoms and molecules become energized, and that which was still becomes active. It appears that, in our universe at least, the default state of matter is always in potential, and that heat is temporary. What's needed to activate the potential is the heat of the fire, yet the fire eventually burns out, and what's left is infinite potential, waiting to be activated again. Action entails a concentration of consciousness, and in order for us to experience, there must be a focus attributed to our action. Our attention can really only be given to one thing at a time, and where we choose to focus is where our energy goes, and thus where creation as a whole goes. Likewise, intelligent infinity requires a focus in order to experience. Infinite potential is unrealized until there is a focus which causes it to come into being. Like frozen matter, until heat is applied, it remains a potential. Heat is the end result of friction, and it is friction created by our focus that causes the fire to be freed within us. What is it that focuses within us? Hermes writes about a concept called the workman, and it is through the friction of the hammer of the workman upon matter that fire is freed. The workman is the mind, which, in its perfect state, is guided by reason. However, the mind can become enamored with its own thoughts and get taken in by the shadows. Recall that the lower intellect is like the moon. It cannot generate its own light and must reflect its light from the spirit. And like the moon, we can easily be taken in by the shadows its reflected light creates. Hermes writes, "For indeed, God was exceedingly enamored of his own form or shape, and delivered unto it all his own workmanships. But he, seeing and understanding the creation of the workman in the whole, would need also himself fall to work, and so was separated from the Father, being in the sphere of generation or operation." Our fall is the result of us becoming enamored by our own workmanship, our own thoughts. As Manly P. Hall says, we are lured toward chaos by our own thoughts. Recall that the devil archetype represents the mind in complete darkness, and how, without the guiding light of spirit, one becomes a slave to false creations. Israeli Regardi writes, "All the forces and ideas from the creative and archetypal realms are represented and focused in this plastic agent, the formative world." We live in a reality of metaphor. Everything in our plastic world is in actuality a reflection of a higher metaphysical principle. For instance, if you focus sunlight, you can create fire. This fire, in turn, creates more light and heat. In the process of our personal evolution, the word, being trapped in darkness, strives towards the light. Our consciousness, at first, is seemingly affected by what happens below. We look for answers outside of ourselves and are affected by what happens to us. Our lower processes rule our thoughts. The vast majority of people on this planet are striving to find truth so that they can unblock the heart. This means that they've achieved sufficient awareness to the level that they understand, at least to some degree, the responsibility that their thinking plays on how they feel. However, until the rocks and the thorns which block the heart are removed, true awareness of the self will be difficult to grasp. To seek outside oneself in order to truly push the boundary of our understanding is an illusion. True progress, true evolution happens within, not without. We must all travel within ourselves, seeking this boundary and pushing it forward for everyone. And by our striving, we free the fire trapped in the darkness of matter, bringing the infinite a little closer to us and releasing the potential contained within all.